lot of questions to be answered about the Chicago street race, a little history about racing in the city of Chicago, and a Chicago prominent billionaire killed in a racing incident.
3, 2, 1.
What's up, everyone? Todd Brown, That Racing Show. Thanks for dropping by for this pit stop segment. Here we are, Chicago Street Course Weekend, a race that's much anticipated by many people not strong favorites of having it there, many people interested to see what's going to happen, not only on the racetrack, but possibly off the racetrack. Now, I want to take a moment here to talk about some of the history of racing in Chicago. I'm not talking about Chicagoland Speedway. I'm talking about the 1930s at Soldier Field. 1935, midgets started racing at Soldier Field, and people from all across the Midwest came in by the tens of thousands to see racing there. In 1939, there was actually a wooden track, very high bank racetrack that was built there before racing started to decline during the war, and it finally made its comeback during the 1950s. So much, in fact, that it attracted NASCAR. And in 1956, Glenn Fireball Roberts won the inaugural and only what was Grand National, now NASCAR Cup Series race at Soldier Field. But they did follow up with 3 races in the NASCAR convertible division before the track finally closed in the 1960s. Now, following that, of course, Chicagoland. In the late 1990s was opened up. It was built on 900 acres, a 1.5-mile racetrack. Had great attendance, had 2 races a year, but over time, it slowly started to decline. Attendance declined. The track itself was in some disrepair that it needed. Some costly updates needed to come in as well as infrastructure around the area that was developing, that was pretty much making people getting in and out of the racetrack have a little bit more issues with all the trucks and transfers going on in the area. So in 2020, NASCAR decided to pull the plug on running Chicagoland Speedway, which brings us to where we are today. Chicago Street Course. Now, again, this is something that many people have been for, many people have been against. Obviously, NASCAR is really behind it. They've handed out thousands and thousands of tickets to people in the area to try to attract the crowd here, hoping for a great weekend. But again, there's so many questions with this that Monday morning, I'm sure we're going to have a lot of stories to talk about. But we're only one day away from the Xfinity race, so we're going to see how all this plays out. Now, in addition to the tickets being given out, it's caused heavy concerns for people in the area because of the road closures. Manhole covers had to be welded down. And just quite frankly, the racetrack surface has a bunch of different changes and some very tight corners. So it's going to be interesting to see how all the racing does play out with everything that's going on. But one of the biggest concerns right here for a lot of people is the safety aspect of what's going on. 900 private security guards have been hired to come in by NASCAR to make this a safe event. So that right there throws out a little bit of a red flag to me that says NASCAR knows there's some concerns with this and is trying their best to keep safety as a priority. I've also heard some rumors going around that some of the teams are also hiring their own private security to be there for the race. So interesting to see how all this plays out. Hopefully it's a great race and nobody has any issues outside of the race cars and dealing with any of the city's issues that they've had in the past. Not saying it's a bad place, but it's the 4th of July weekend, big time, a lot of money in the area. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything does play out. Now, not only is the Cup there, this is the race for the Xfinity race as well. And this is something that's really interesting to me because this weekend is a one-off race. This is the first time this has happened. Everybody's going to be after this trophy. And if you look at the Cup trophy, pretty cool, different design. And the same thing is going to be happening with the Xfinity series. Now, firsthand right here, I know that Emerlin Gase Motorsports has sold both of their cars this weekend to some road racing experts. But it's interesting that Joey Gase is also taking a seat in the '08 car just to be part of this. So it kind of shows how much people want to be a part of this. It's a historic event. And once again, it's going to be interesting to see how all this plays out. Hopefully everything is safe and a great weekend, but a lot's on the table right now to see how this works. Now, the one other story I want to talk about right here, it's kind of tragic in so many ways. Well, it is tragic in so many ways. There's a man, James Crown, who is a very prominent billionaire from Chicago. He was very invested in the city, and he was very invested in bringing down the crime rate in the city. where he actually was putting together and enlisting CEOs from across the area because he wanted to bring the crime rate down to below 400 murders a year, which was a significant decrease considering that there was 695 murders there last year. But he was doing every effort he could to try to put this infrastructure together to make the town better. Now, he also held these big events over the 4th of July, a lot of times being attended by Obama. He's friends with Joe Biden, a lot of political figures. And this year, over the 4th of July, in anticipation of the Chicago race, he went to Aspen and took part in a closed course racetrack. It was kind of some open cockpit cars that were going on. And the unfortunate thing about this was it was for his 70th birthday. And unfortunately, he missed a turn, hit a barricade head on, and lost his life in this incident and suffered multiple blunt force trauma injuries. So a sad end to this, but I have to bring in so many questions if this was all in pure anticipation of what was going on in Chicago this weekend, because he obviously threw some big events over the 4th of July, and I can't help but think he was going to have a really big time this 4th of July with racing in Chicago. Anyways, as I always say, I hope everybody out there is having a great weekend. I hope for some really great, safe racing this weekend, and I hope we got a lot to talk about on Monday that is racing related instead of anything else. So, as I say, have a great weekend, enjoy the race, and as always, we'll see you at Checkered Flag.